Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chat. This is Coffee with Mike, and today I get to sit down with the Madelaine Weiss. Guys, if you don't know who this is, she is an author of an amazing book. Would you mind holding that book up for me?
It'd be my pleasure.
Getting to Great. No, because I like that because the cover is awesome. For those of you that aren't seeing it, it says Getting to Great, GREAT, has a period after each of the letters. So, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But for now, Madelaine, thank you for joining me on Java Chat.
I'm laughing because I found out yesterday I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and they sent me a video of her. She has a paperback copy of it, and you know how little kids will carry a toy or a doll or whatever?
Yeah.
Carrying my book around. I said to my son, "What does she think it is?" He said, "I don't know, but she takes it with her everywhere," as I hope you all do. So hi, and thank you for having me.
That is an awesome story. And yes, that is what toddlers do. It's just like, it is the thing. It will go with me everywhere. And that's awesome.
Outside. It was outside on the stoop.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can run them clean out the country. They will hold on to that until it's the day is over.
Delighted me. Yeah,
it was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, as everybody knows, our first section talks a little bit more about who you are, where you're from, how you got to where you are today, and any stories that are relevant to that. So why don't you give our listeners a bit of background on who you are?
Okay, so maybe I'll just dive in the deep end.
Have fun. It's only 13 feet, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. Okay, so when I was 15 years old, my father died suddenly.
No.
Yeah, of a stroke. He was 42 years old. But since I was, speaking of little girls, since I was such a mouthy little girl, like I like to say, speaking truth to power all the time, I was grounded a lot. In fact, I was grounded at the time that he died.
Oh.
So I went for years because people didn't talk to their kids then, or at least mine didn't, the way they do today, about their feelings and how they're integrating an experience and so on. So I went around for years thinking that since I was so feisty and he had a stroke, that he died of me.
No.
Yeah, until one day at the cemetery when I broke down with my mom about how all my fault it was. And she said, "No, honey, it wasn't you. It was work." So no surprise, right?
Yeah.
I help high achievers master their minds so they can have more hours in the day, more peace of mind, more energy, freedom, and fulfillment, maintaining that high performance they want in all areas of their lives without burning out like my dad did.
Yeah.
So
what did your dad do?
My dad was a clothing manufacturer.
Wow.
That's actually what we were fighting about. He was making all my clothes and they didn't look like every other little girl's clothes. They had leather and suede. They were really very snazzy, but not what a young, especially teenagers, how sensitive they are. So there was a lot.
Trendy.
Yeah, well, you kind of want to fit in when you're in middle school, for example.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
I was lucky if I fit into my pants. That was about as far as I got.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was the odd shaped kid, the one that they just look at you and they go, "Yeah, that's not going to be big enough."
Oh, poor baby.
It's funny because later on it was fine. I ended up becoming a power lifter, power bodybuilder, all that other stuff. It's just like, oh, that's what all that's for. Okay.
So the real question is, do you think you would have ended up being a power lifter had you not had the issues? as a child.
So that
Think there's a connection?
there may be.
Yeah.
What happened was I was challenged as a freshman to a bench contest between me and somebody else who just wanted to show off.
Yeah.
And I found out I was stronger than they were. And that
Yeah.
started a journey of me just getting into lifting weights, just to lift. So that's kind of how that got egged on.
So that might have happened anyway.
It might have happened anyway. Although I will say that as that kid that was that odd shape, for me to have been able to push cars at the age of, 11, 12, and 13 was kind of unusual,
Yeah.
but is what it is.
So I started out
Yeah.
in a clinical chemistry lab. I didn't start out doing this. My
Okay. How does that work?
well, my mother, I don't think my father expected to die at 42.
Yep.
And he didn't leave a real big endowment. So my mother, who was the bookkeeper for his business, went to work in a steel factory, which I don't think was in her plan.
Right.
And I wanted to help.
Sure.
So right out of high school, I didn't even go right to college. Nobody had an idea that I would do that, which is a whole other story.
Mhm.
So I took a program at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate Hospital in Medical Technology. So I started out in a clinical chemistry lab. I worked for the USDA Biological Control Lab. I worked at Drexel University's Cardiac Cath Research Lab. There was always this pull to the people, like you have a calling.
Yeah.
Like, I really needed to be doing this other thing. So one foot in front of the other. I kept getting more and more education and experience. So I'm loaded up to the gills now and all that stuff. But just trying to figure out, I think, what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
And trying to make a difference to help people so nobody has to go suffer the fate that he did and our family.
And wow, that's interesting. That's because that's a very different path than I would have thought you might have taken. I mean, coming from that kind of clinical and then moving into where you are now, I mean, how was that transition?
Well, what's interesting is I've had these brain tests. So I have this equally balanced right brain, left brain. So you could see where the science and the humanities sort of come together.
Sure.
There. I've heard that it's a weakness in the sense that people sometimes think you're arrogant because they don't how do you think you know what you know? But what happens with the brain like this is that it picks up stuff.
Yeah, a lot faster than others, sure.
And is able to convert it into plain talk. So when I was working at Harvard Medical School, I was also studying as part of this hunger to learn and understand. And I'm still studying it and practicing it at Veda Vedanta, pre-Hindu tradition, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I decided this stuff is so powerful and the concepts are so simple. And I can't be the only one who knows this. And I didn't know another living soul in my part of the world who would be studying what I was studying. So I thought I have to bring this to the regular people. So I put a little 4-week program together at Harvard Medical School. And HR told me they were banging down the door to get into this program. And they said they never saw a course grow. Usually people start and they drop off and it gets smaller and smaller. But this one, because the stuff is just so powerful. So yeah.
And this was, so was this the beginning to eventually getting into the practice that you have now, or the?
Actually, no, because I had already been a classically trained psychotherapist way before that.
Okay.
But at some point, I found myself being an administrator director of a group mental health practice.
Wow.
And I didn't know a thing about management. So I went to business school to learn about
that part.
organizational development. And then from there, I was an organizational development officer in a commercial insurance roll-up. So there's just this, you know, if you live long enough, it's just this, talk about pivoting. I feel like I'm the pivot poster child. I enjoyed every single thing. Oh, and after that, a friend asked me if I would come and work for him at the medical school.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was the associate director of the anatomical gift program there, which was a really nice coming together of the business and the humanity side of things. So, yeah.
And what did you do there for them at that point?
So if you wanted to donate your body to science,
Oh, okay.
you would call my office. And what I found so absolutely nourishing about this work is that when people called, they needed two things: information and kindness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a friend who's a female judge, and she said to me once, at the end of every day, somebody's mad at me.
Yeah.
You know, she has to come down on one side or the other.
Yeah.
Somebody's always mad at her at the end of every day. And I said, gee, you know, it's not like that for me. I get like blessed up one side and down the other all day, every day, because what's being asked of me is something that's mine to give. I mean, I know how the program works, obviously, better than the people on the street do. So when they're calling, it's easy to provide that.
Yeah.
And there was always like something that used to come over me when I'd pick up the phone.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what it was. It was almost like channeling. There was this kind of, well, I wonder sometimes if it was because of the early death in my family that I am so close to it in a fearless way that I could really be there for these people who were calling to talk to me about death or something.
Kindness and compassion are free, and they're ours to give at will. That's compassion in particular is something that's very much missing in our world right now, from what I see. And I choose to look for the good, and I still see that there's a lack of compassion in a lot of cases. People are running down the wrong emotional road. Another story for another time.
It's blocked by the anxieties.
Yeah, I believe that.
The very primitive anxieties about our own survival in what feels like such a dangerous world.
Yeah.
So everybody, I believe, is trying to get through the day in the best way they know how.
Yeah.
That's easier and harder for some people than for others. And the ones who have more work to do to just get through the day don't have a lot left over for other people.
They also aren't equipped to deal with it a lot of times. They're blocked, and some of it from themselves, some of it from the lack of equipment that they have, the lack of tools in the toolbox, which is what if I'm hearing correctly, is what's in that book. So, and definitely we'll get into that in a little bit, but I do. It's interesting that you did that. My mother wanted to have her body donated. Unfortunately, because she had a bit of pneumonia, they couldn't take her. They still took care of a couple of things for her, but you're giving yourself up for the betterment of humankind, for one, out of your own self, which was awesome. I've been around a lot of passing, a lot of death in my life. As a musician, back in Hawaii, you played for birthdays, you played for weddings, and you played for funerals. So, and they were kind of, interestingly enough, evenly spread out over that career. I didn't play more for one than the other that I can remember. But you have a tendency, after a time, to shut off certain things, especially around the funerals. um, I noticed that I had become colder on them, and realized that I can't do that, because then I shut them off from the compassion that they're seeking, the comfort that they're hoping people will give them just from
Yeah.
stopping by and giving their condolences, giving their sympathies. Um, when you're young, you don't think about that stuff.
Right.
More now today, I totally get it. Anybody loses somebody, it's like my heart just flies out of my chest. I just want to send them all the love I can,
Mm.
because I know how it feels. I lost my dad to cancer, lost my mom to a stroke, just like your mom. My mom passed away at 82, thankfully.
Yeah.
Um, but same premise. And had I been equipped, like you understand,
Mhm.
um, I probably would have been a little more compassionate back then. Um, and
Well,
and I,
you really put your finger on something. When I was at the medical school, in addition to what I described,
Mhm.
I also used to speak before the first year medical class at the beginning and the end of their anatomy course. And my whole interest on their behalf was exactly what you just said, which is how can they stay in touch with their humanity without becoming overwhelmed by it. Like you had to play music. You you couldn't become so overwhelmed that you couldn't do your job, and neither can they.
yeah,
The doctors can't
yeah,
become so overwhelmed that they can't do their job. So mindfulness,
yeah,
which is what I teach also, is how you can notice and stay connected to
mhm,
who you are and what you feel without becoming so overwhelmed by it that you can't function,
yeah,
which is what we want from our doctors. And you make the point that it comes into play when people are providing anything for other people, that you have to be able to hold on to your own humanity because that affects everything else in your life, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, and I would imagine it affects your performance too, whether there's heart in it or not.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So,
There's a difference between doing something cold and doing something passionately. We hear about that every day.
yeah,
So if you are, especially people that are in the medical field, the RNs, the doctors, the NPs, all of them, they see some heavy shit. Just
yeah,
bar none. They see some heavy shit. It's easy to eventually come to a point where you're just like, I'm off. I'm
that's
done.
right.
I'm out. And
And
while they're still at work, and that's dangerous. So
yes, very. And that's why when they approach their cadaver for the first time, is such a window of opportunity. Because if they're ever going to shut down, believe me, that's a good time for
oh yeah, I
because
would
that's so overwhelming. So I wanted to get like in front of that before they went into the lab, even for the first time, to remind them it's okay to feel and just come back, bring your attention back to the task at hand. And every time the feeling emerges, you acknowledge it and then come back to the what we call the working surface, rather than getting swept away with these
yeah,
feelings
yeah.
or cutting them off completely is the other. Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump on a limb here and say this is what you teach, as far as, but beyond just talking to the students, but this is what you would teach anybody in any profession rather. Doesn't matter whether they're um, the CEO or the gas station attendant, because at any point in time, any one of these
Right.
people could experience exactly what a doctor experiences. Maybe not in the moment of what they deal with, but in a moment that's relevant to their particular profession. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think people spend, or we could say waste or spend, pick whichever you like, so much time and energy trying to cope with feelings they don't think they should have. I was just working with a client this morning
Hmm.
who was so consumed by, abducted by, hijacked by what he was feeling
Hmm.
that his eye was not on the real ball at all.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for him, you know, by the time he was into it for like way too long about how he was feeling
Right.
about this decision, I said, do you realize how hijacked you just got and how much does that happen in your life? Like you could be building this really great life, and instead you're obsessing like a dog with a bone over this decision that's being made by your emotions. We never want the emotions driving the bus. The emotions inform us.
Exactly.
We acknowledge them, but emotions don't get to make any decisions and they don't get to implement them either.
Yeah.
And that's what I was watching this morning with this client. Enough, you know, I let it go enough so anyone could see it.
Yeah.
And especially that he could see it. Like, could you see what you just did? And when you add up how many times you do that in the course of a day where your rage is running your life,
I always thought that the emotions were supposed to be like the signposts. They're not supposed to be the bus driver.
they're data.
Yeah. It's just stuff to look at. You take in stimulus and you act accordingly to what it actually means, not what it feels like. Does that
So,
make sense?
yeah, yeah. So I have a question that I like to use, and I always recommend other people consider using it too.
Yeah.
Your data informs you, something's up. It could be something that seems really wonderful that isn't. It could be something that seems really terrible that is or isn't,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But the data informs you something's up.
Yeah.
And so this is the hand model of the brain. And this is the agitated and emotional, excited part of the brain. And when this thing is out of control, it throws the higher brain offline. So
Wow.
you're not thinking smart anymore.
Right.
Your higher cortex is absent,
Yeah.
offline, shut down. So what we need to do, and this is in the book, and of course I teach this, is to calm the agitated part of the brain. Now, dismissing it doesn't calm it. It makes it crazier.
I was
'Cause
gonna say that's like the old adage, calm down.
yeah, exactly. If you ever want someone to calm down, do not say that, right? Because that just
Calm down,
agitates.
sir. Calm down. It's okay. Calm down.
Yeah, that makes sir want to punch you in the
Yeah,
nose.
exactly.
And that. Yeah, no, calm down is terrible. It never just gets people mad. So, right. So instead of that, we're going to say something instead like, I hear you. I see you.
Yeah.
I understand. You're concerned. I got it from here.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
And then that question that happens up here in the higher cortex is there something to be done here? Car coming, get out of the way. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's something to be done here, but not by you. In other words, maybe there's someone you need to have a chat with.
Right.
Sometimes there's something to be done here, but you already did it. It's enough. Just breathe. As sometimes there's nothing to be done. Sometimes there never was anything for us to be. So it's a really good question to find a category that you can operate from that makes sense.
Those last two, I think, are the ones that people have the most problem with because they constantly
there's
believe
nothing.
that they need to be the ones doing.
Yeah.
But they need to
Yeah.
be in control, and it's like, but you can't. You're not an actual part of the equation here.
Well, you can be in control of your own response.
Yeah, and that's about it.
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, said that, and a lot of people quote him on that, that we cannot control what happens outside of us, but no one can take away our control of our response
Yep.
to what happens. And so a quote of his is, between stimulus, the thing that happens, and response, there is a space. in that space is our choice, and in our choice is our freedom and our growth.
Yeah.
Trouble is, a lot of people don't really have a whole lot of space between the stimulus and response.
They've shortened it
So
out purposely.
what? Yeah.
They shortened out that space.
So a big part of what anyone can do, I have a young woman client who's in real estate, and she's boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And the thing that has been most helpful to her, and she told me that the people who own her company are all commenting on how great she's doing now. And I say to her, so what is it? What's so useful that's making such a difference? And she said, the slowing down. So it's like a movie, and she slows down the frames, and she can edit.
Oh yeah.
When it's like that, you
Yep.
can't edit anything. You have no impact. It's just like a fast train going down the track headed God knows where, and you have no control over yourself.
Yeah.
So just slowing it all down, then you can intervene. Then you can have control that you wouldn't otherwise have.
It's interesting you use the train, and because I've heard variations of this, what you're talking about, and the biggest one on a everybody thinks, well, you need to hit the brakes. It's like, not necessarily. It's not always about hitting the brakes. Sometimes it's just about taking it down a gear or two. You can still be running fast, but you've got to give yourself the time to actually be able to see that something's going on, and then have that, like you just mentioned, you have that space to make a decision without being reflexive on it. Because if you're just using reflex
Reactive.
or react, yeah, you're being reactive. If you're
Yeah.
if you're only reacting, that's where problems can occur. If you give it time and you decide
Yes,
rather than react, you're still running fast. You might still be in second, third gear, you know.
I totally agree with you. You need to slow it down just enough so that you can have some control,
Yeah.
because otherwise you have none. Then you have no control over what's happening outside of you, and you have no control over anything happening inside of you. And the only way to have that is to slow it down so you can get in there.
Some of the higher achievers,
Yeah.
uh, that aren't so well known, um, they always seem like they're in full forward motion, and for a lot of the day they are. But there are points in the day that they've even said, yeah, that's a moment in time that I step away from everything. Nobody gets to talk to me for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes. So I can
Yep.
take a minute and catch up with what all just happened. And
Yeah.
they come right back out and they're full bore again. And it's like, I get the premise of why they do it, but the way you put it just makes even more sense now. They created space where there might not be none for them to pull it out of gear for a second, go in neutral and go, okay, what's going on today? What's really happening, and where do I need to make my next shot? That just makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
And so you've been doing this for how long now?
Doing which?
Doing the consulting and then as well the coaching.
Well, I was I think I mentioned I was an administrative director of a group mental health practice decades ago.
Okay.
And I did all those different things in between then and now. When I went full steam ahead on concentrating just
Mm-hmm.
on, well, what happened was in 2013, I left Harvard Medical School.
Mhm.
My boss cried. It was really sweet, but I felt like, they make us live so long now
Yeah.
that I had to ask myself, do I want to be doing this very same thing for the rest of my days? Because if not, now would be a good time to pivot. So I left the area because all of my children and grandchildren are here
Right.
in DC.
Uh,
And at the same time, I kind of thought that traditional classic psychodynamic psychotherapy had some shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started studying and became board certified in coaching.
Nice.
So I've been doing that full steam ahead, to use our train, since 2013.
That is awesome. And I'm sure
Yeah.
a ton of people have gotten a great amount of results from it. That just listening to the way you present things, it's easy to hear.
No, thank you.
Well, we were kind of talking about that pre-show that, the idea, well, actually not pre-show. You kind of talked about it during the show, how you're able to make things plain. Uh, the
Yeah.
there are some
Yeah.
experts that
Yeah.
sometimes you have to kind of decipher what they're saying, and I didn't have to ask that many questions at all in this first section about what it is that you do. It was pretty clear, and
Good.
easy. I can't imagine your clients must be very happy, guys. That we're going to take a short 30-second break. When we come back, we're going to talk about inspirations, motivations that get Madelaine moving in the morning, and probably what's kept her moving. Most of that's probably well set in your head. You can probably figure it out, but we want to hear it from her. So we'll be back in 30 seconds to talk more about that. And we're back here, Java Chat, sitting here with Madelaine Weiss talking about the march to greatness. Is in my head, it's already a march because we're just looking at another way to get to where we want to get to. Second section, we always talk about inspiration, motivation. You kind of touched on it a little bit in the first section about, really taking a look at things and going, what's gonna feel good, what's gonna feel worthwhile, I should say, not just feel good, because feeling good isn't everything, at least not in my head, but being able to make a mark that mattered and really improve humankind. Part of that sounds like it was a partial inspiration from your life experience, but what else? I mean, what else moved you? I mean, there had to have been, sometimes it's only that one thing, but there had to have been other things along the way that were just like, yeah, I'm still on the right path. This is it. I'm still charging forward. What were some of those things?
So yes, you're right. I do shoot from, if I can save one little girl or boy's mommy or daddy or anybody else for that matter, I'm doing what I was put here to do.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what sustains that, though. It's real simple. This is not rocket science. The thing that keeps me going, like I know to my bones that this is what I was meant to do and that I will do this forever till I'm not doing anything anymore,
Right.
is the smile on my client's face, the transformation that they make. It's not about, like, they can say nice things to me and that's sweet and I appreciate that, but that's not really what I'm looking for. What I'm really looking for is, what difference did that person and I make together in their life? And when I see that, when I hear someone say to me, I finally like my job for the first time in my life, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
When I hear people who came maybe to talk about their work and they say things like, by the way, I am sleeping like a baby and I didn't even realize that I wasn't.
Oh my.
Or someone who comes complaining about their spouse and will say something like, I realized it wasn't really her. She's the best friend I ever had. I'm just not in the right place in my work. Or someone will say, the reason I realize I've been uncomfortable in my work is because it's not the right place for me. It's not the right setting. Or the other side of that coin is, I love when people rearrange furniture. Go ahead. Are you sneezing? No.
It's coughing.
Okay.
I have the allergies and they come in every once in a while, so I apologize for that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You You okay?
I'll be fine in a couple seconds.
Okay.
I'll break that, come back in 3, 2.
Okay.
So you were one of the cool things that I hear from some of my guests is, especially the coaches and the physicians and things of that nature, is that warm smile
Yeah.
is a sincere gratitude. It's way better than any words could ever possibly
Yeah.
provide.
Yeah.
I used to get it when I played music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, every once in a while you'd look into the audience and you'd see a couple faces really, really enjoying themselves.
Mhm.
And there could be 400 people out in that audience, and that's who I played for the rest of the night.
Good
Because
thing.
yeah, because that it made their evening. And you know, you might never see them at the end of the show because we're on a stage and they're not, and so on. And we didn't really do the meet and greet thing after. But you knew. And to see an epiphany from your side of things, being able to see those people go, shit, I get it.
Yeah.
I finally get it. I know why. I mean, that's
Well, I don't even get excited about that. I get excited when I hear that something real, practical shifted in their lives. Like the guy who was living in he said, he's a lawyer. He said his apartment was rat infested. I said, are you kidding me? He said, well, not really rat infested. It feels like it's rat infested. Built himself a new home with a gorgeous garden, so that there's something so practical and tangible that they actually did something, which is why I shifted from psychodynamic psychotherapy to coaching, because at the end of every session, there are action steps. This stuff, none of it matters. It's not good enough that a light bulb went off. None of it matters if it's not mattering. So it's seeing the real manifestations of the transformations, how their lives are better, that does it for me. And what I was going to mention before, I think we broke there for a second, is that sometimes people just rearrange the furniture enough on the inside that they find happiness exactly where they are without changing a thing on the outside. I've seen that, and I love that. That you don't have to make a gigantic shift necessarily on the outside, but you can shift your perspective on the inside to begin to appreciate what's there in a way that maybe you never did before.
yeah, it's I've said this on a couple of other episodes. It's an old thing with me that I learned years ago, that you have a choice when you wake. It's either good morning, Lord, or good Lord, it's morning. Which do you choose?
I like that.
And it's a sobering moment if you're honest about it, of what you choose to take into that day and how the rest of that day will play out because of it. Because
Completely.
once the conscious is up and it's like, all right,
Yep.
what are we doing? Oh, it's a shit day. Oh, well, I guess it's a shit day. Well, now you're
I
gonna find everything that's shit.
I
Versus
said
waking up
to
and going, you know
somebody
what?
yesterday
Yeah,
that we can make a new decision, which is, I think, exactly what you're saying too. You make a new decision that this is going to be a happy day, or this is going to be a happy life, and then everything that fits in with that gets your attention.
yeah.
And everything that doesn't, unless it's an emergency and it really needs your attention, doesn't.
Yeah.
And then that's how, so I like to think about planting a new garden. Speaking of my guy he literally planted a new garden. I like to think of the brain as a garden where you plant new,
The fact that he
healthy.
went and got out of the rat infested apartment to go build himself a home, which is awesome in and of itself, and then added that too, because honestly, they're
There's
kind of
actually more than that.
even
He,
more.
oh my God, yeah, he had an estranged child
Oh boy.
who's living in the home now.
Wow.
So he reclaimed his child. So yeah, that's you know,
That's
from
insanely
mom.
huge.
I know.
I mean,
That's
wow.
that's what yeah, I know. That's the kind of stuff that I see.
No wonder
Uh,
you're inspired to do what you're doing. That's
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
see, while I don't have an estranged child, I did lose my son for a period of about 3 years.
Mm,
Um, through an old divorce years ago.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Um, no, it was a celebration actually. I'm kidding. And my son was literally taken from me, and my mind was to run down the wrong road. I was homeless and all of that kind of stuff, and I really had to rebuild a lot.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that rebuild, I got my son back, and he lives with me still to this day. He's I noticed that he leans on me for certain things still, which is that's cool. I mean, I'm trying to get him to be his own self-sufficient. I don't know that he was encouraged as much when he wasn't with me to be self-sufficient, because there's a few things that are showing that he's kind of not. For the most part, he's his own man. He's 19 years old. He's off work right now. He's doing his thing, but he still lives with me. And to me, that's as much as that's the epitome of me saying, wow, he still wants to be around his dad. That's pretty awesome. That means I'm doing something right. I'm good
Yeah.
with it.
Good for both of you.
Yeah, he's learning. I don't always explain everything well, so sometimes he holds back on doing certain things because I haven't completely explained it to him. He's
And
one of those,
also because he's 19.
yeah, he's not quite. It's not. Dad doesn't quite know everything anymore, so it's so it's like there's certain things that he kind of like, and then I
Hard.
show him proof, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I get it. It's like, yeah, but yeah, that wow, the attorney, that's a huge deal. I can completely understand that. That is,
Yeah.
it's amazing what happens when you have that shift. How much changes and how much can change. Sometimes in the span of just a couple weeks, sometimes even over time of years.
Oh, yeah. I have a woman who comes to mind who knocked it so out of the park for herself and her family in 12 weeks. It was stunning.
I'd love. How did that work? That's got to be a story.
She was a lawyer in a very tedious area of law. She hated her job. She was so burnt out and she saw no way out.
Yeah,
And that was when I met her. And, there was this pivotal moment. She felt so trapped.
sure.
There was this pivotal moment, and they come out of nowhere sometimes, they come out of my mouth and I feel like I'm channeling or something. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah,
But where she realized that this job she hated, she realized that the most important thing in the world to her was her family.
uh-huh.
Speaking of family,
Sure.
she had a husband and a teenage, like early 20-ish kind of son. And she was the primary breadwinner and felt like so obliged to keep this job she hated because she was supporting the family. And I said to her, so this thing you think you hate, it's really nourishing you and your family, isn't it? And it was the word nourishing.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, I guess it is. And I said, it feeds you all every day. It brings you all the entertainment and pleasure that you do have, and you hate it. It was like having a relationship and being hateful toward the other person.
Right.
And there was something so stunning in that reframing for her. Next thing I knew, she didn't feel trapped by it anymore. She felt grateful to it.
Sure.
And the next thing I knew, she filed all the papers for licensing for a side hustle business with her husband and her son. So she was now spending, when she came to me, she didn't have an ounce of time or energy to spare because she was
Sure.
so depleted. But now that she didn't feel trapped anymore and she was grateful, she was like, I don't have to go to work. I
Right.
get to go to work.
Yeah.
And so she had all of a sudden, she who had no time and energy had all this time and energy. She put it into building this side hustle. So now she's doing this thing with her family, spending more time with them, having tons of fun.
Sure.
So I said to her, well, what are you going to do when the novelty wears off? Because in my book, GREAT,
Hmm.
the T is for tackling the normal human natural resistance
Right.
to new things and change. I said, what are you going to do when that happens? And she said, I have a toolkit now I never had before.
Yeah.
She said, bring it on. There's nothing I can't handle. Nothing like that will ever happen to me again. I know exactly what to do. I'm good.
That's huge. That is insanely huge.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I know. I know.
It's
So much fun for me to see that.
I'm sure. I mean, when you can watch another human all of a sudden go from struggle to thrive, and
Yeah,
know that
just flourish.
yeah, just completely flourish and just absolutely, go kill it. And you know you had at least a little something to do with it, whether it's a minor influence or a major influence. It feels amazing.
Just to be a part of the journey,
Yeah.
watching them get to smile. The book is Get to Great, but I really think about it as Get to Smile. Like these people are so depleted, and then the next thing you know, they just look alive because they are alive, you know.
Burden busy professionals.
Oh, burdened, busy, or should I write that down? I should write that down.
Maybe I just for some reason that just kind of just yelled out in my head just now. Burdened busy professionals are the ones that need to read this book. and and
Well, I'm
if you're
doing,
listening to this, please be honest with yourself about this, because it might not be a huge burden, but if you're finding any dissatisfaction anywhere in your work life, you probably need to read this book.
yeah, because when we're like that, we're not just burdening ourselves, we're burdening everybody else
That's right. Everybody around you is feeling it. It's impossible
at
to not.
work, at home. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that you end up taking work home, and you end up taking home to work, and then there's that crossover. It just doesn't get any better. It's a bad
I'm
cycle.
actually putting together, I'm in the mid to final stages of the development of an online course based on the book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you'll need to
Yeah.
let us know about that when you launch, so we can help promote it. Because I mean,
Thank
you're one
you.
of our guests, so we're happy to push it out.
That'd be great.
Any other thoughts? Any other inspirations, or any other mentors? Anybody that ever affected you and kind of pushed you in the direction, or was it just a natural progression? Because it sounds real natural, honestly, what you did.
Yeah. Organic, as
Yeah.
they.
Well, yeah, if they want to call it, yeah.
I do have something that I would like to leave you and everyone with.
Mhm.
And I have lots of mentors, lots of people who stood with me, for me, and taught me so much. And I can't name all of them. So what I am going to do is there's this concept that comes from the Advaita Vedanta pre-Hindu tradition. And the concept is good company.
Nice.
And good company is not just what we think of as good company. Good company is, well, so you're a musician. It's the music we listen to.
Mhm.
It's the books we read. It's the food we eat. It's the wine we drink. It's, and pay attention here, it's the thoughts in our head. Those are not always good company.
Right.
And then, of course, it is the way we typically think about good company, which is the people we invite and keep or not in our lives. And the idea is the very finest quality that we can find and afford. And if we live by this concept of good company, if you think about only the very best you can find and afford in your life, you will notice a dramatic difference in your life, because the pollution and the toxicity to your mind, body, spirit disappears or dissolves, let's say. So,
If I can share something with that real quick before we take our next break, that's phenomenal. It's interesting. The finest quality we can find and afford
yes.
in my life, I've noticed that when I sought the finest quality, affordability wasn't always a factor, because the ones that could afford it gave it to me anyway. And they did it out of love, they did it out of compassion, they did it out of seeing someone else needing a leg up, not and maybe a
Mhm,
little push.
mhm.
They brought their finest to the table, saying, this could be yours too. Have a taste.
Right.
It's and leaving yourself open to that finest quality, interestingly enough, brings that finest quality, even if you can't always afford it, until you can.
Well, when you think about something like, let's say, if you drink wine, so that's especially in a case like that, or the environment in which you live. There are some cases where there is only so much we can afford.
Sure.
And I worked with a 24-year-old, very talented, sought after young man he was living with his parents and he wanted to move out of the family home.
Mhm.
And the premise that we used was the finest environment that he could find and afford,
Sure.
because he didn't want to do any more than he could afford. Just like we can't all be drinking $500 bottles of wine every time that we have wine, but the finest that we can find and afford. So maybe that means we have less of it to afford finer of it, or whatever, which I think is different from what you were talking about. I think you were talking about that when you, correct me if I didn't understand it properly, that when you have a mindset about, let's say, people,
Hmm.
that you're only going to allow what you consider quality people
Hmm.
in your life, more of that shows up more than you thought you could afford or qualify for, however you want to say that, shows up for you, because you're putting out that kind of energy
Yeah,
that
and that's definitely a big part of
invites.
definitely a big part of it. I've literally had people share the quote unquote $500 bottle of vino with me. It's not something that I could normally afford or would afford.
Right.
I'm not a big wine drinker, but for the sake of example,
Yeah.
I've been able to sit at that table. But it was because I was open to having that available, and I'm just one of those people that's like, it's there. There's abundance. There's things out there that are fine quality. How do I afford it?
You know, when I was trying to decide between Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, I was studying both and I
Mhm.
had to make a decision, or I wanted to make a decision which
Sure.
one to choose for
Mhm.
my life study. I walked into the Buddhist centers and there was nothing there. It was very bare,
Mhm.
very sparse, very minimalist.
Yeah.
I walked into the Advaita Vedanta Center and it was this gorgeous antique home with flowers and fruit and nuts and cheese. It's just abundance
Yeah.
everywhere. And I
Sure.
said to myself, I know that both of these schools of thought are going to the same place.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter which door I walk in, I'm going to the same place. But this one is so lush and abundant.
Yeah.
So that was a large part of why I picked it, because it was just the beauty of it. In my book, I talk about the first time I encountered that beauty. I said something like, I always thought beauty was either something you had or you didn't have. And if you had it, a lot of people would resent you for it. In this school, I learned that beauty was an imperative, that everything had to be as fine as you could find or make it. And I don't know, there's something about that. I kind of
I dig it. I'm totally on that. That makes
like,
sense.
why not, right?
No, if you're either in abundance or you're not. I mean, no matter what door you go, but that being manifested physically
Yeah.
definitely reinforces the whole thinking behind it. So yeah, I'm down. I get it. That's cool. That's awesome.
Mm.
We're gonna take one more break, guys. Wow, we're still doing good, but we're moving. Now we're gonna take one more break, guys. When we come back, I want to dig more into the book. We'll talk a little bit more about
Okay.
getting great,
Yep.
and any other things that are coming up in the
Okay.
near or not so near future. We'll be back in 30 seconds. And we're back here, Java Chat with Madelaine Weiss, and she wrote a book. The book is titled, as she holds it up again,
But,
Getting to Great. And for those of you that are listening on the podcast, I asked her to hold up the book because I love the cover, for one.
Thank you.
It's a great cover. And the mere fact that it has great with a period after each letter obviously denotes an acronym. Inspiration for the book?
So not so long ago, actually, I asked myself, so what is it that's putting a smile on all these people's faces? Because they're different ages, genders, occupations, ethnicity. So what is it? What is it? And also because I have so many different kinds of tools in my toolkit, I was also curious to know what's happening here.
Sure.
Turns out what I found was this 5-step process or strategy, whatever you want to call it, that is really what humans have been using since the beginning of time, pretty much. It's the world belongs to those who adapt best to the environments they're in.
Yep.
And so, or find environments, which we do more now than we used to. We have more choice now. Find environments that are better adapted to who we are. So GREAT. G is, real quick, grounding in the belief. Doesn't have to be like that. Doesn't have to hurt so much.
Right.
You can have a great life. Most people come to me not really knowing or believing that. They just want some of the pain to stop. So I hold that space until you can walk into it and see and know for yourself real time.
Sure.
You can have a great life. If a great life, and this is the first line of the book, depends on a great fit between who we are and the environments in which we work and live, well, then we need to know who we are. So R is for recognizing who we are, not who somebody else thinks we should be, or even necessarily who we thought we should be.
Amen. I drink to that. I drink to that all day.
Or even who we thought we should be, but our truer nature, our values, our interests, our abilities, strengths, weaknesses, whatever. And then once we have a better sense of that than people have typically, because it's so noisy inside, they can't even hear who they are and what they really want. But once they get a little further along in that, then they go exploring so the E is for exploring the external environments. Some things you may have thought of, but gone, that's not going to work. Or things you never even thought of before in your life, like this woman and her side hustle, which I don't know where that came from. Right.
Attorney for entrepreneur. How does that work?
Yeah. Right. But the thing is, you can't stay in E for exploration because the mind knows when you're just dreaming and you're not really doing. So A is for action. William James said action doesn't guarantee happiness, but there's no happiness without action. So the A is for action. And then, as I mentioned before, I think T is for once you get into gear. T is for tackling the normal, natural, predictable human emotion of resistance to change that humans experience. I usually start predicting that soon after I meet people, so that by the time that happens, they can say, oh yeah, we were expecting that. There it is. So being in alignment with our environments is how we survived and thrived as a species. The ones who could lived to make more babies. And so we're wired for this, and we don't really use it as well and as much as we could. So this has 10 case examples of people who went through GREAT, and because there are 10 chapters, and there are chapters on things like time and money and play and power and other people and what goes on in organizational life and things like that. And after each case example, there's an exercise, a mindset kind of exercise.
That's cool.
Topic specific to each chapter in every chapter. Yeah. So I kind of set it up that each chapter has the same format. They all begin with an anecdote from my life. So
that's cool.
People find those entertaining.
While this book could easily be meant for anybody, who would be the typical ideal reader for your book?
Well, the typical ideal reader is someone, we used to, when I was in training, we used to call them the worried well. These are people who have, men and women, who have everything they need to have a really great life. They just don't know that.
While that, the hardest part about that right there is the not knowing. So you having said that that's the typical one that should be reading this, they're not going to hear that.
Oh, they're not going to hear that? Okay.
How do we shake them out of that so that they do hear that they should be reading this book? Because a lot of times we kind of talked about it. People don't see it until somebody is there to facilitate that. Hey, you're sitting in a perspective where you're kind of blinding yourself.
Well, people, I think, particularly that age group that you were talking about, 24 to 35, they're not as inclined to take it sitting down.
This is true.
They want, you out there, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're listening, I think you want to have a great work and life.
Yeah.
Don't want it to be all work, but you want to have great work, but you want to have it integrated in a really satisfying, successful way. And those are the people typically now who are coming to me because, again, they're not taking it sitting down. They're saying, I want a great life. And if you think you got something that can help me get there, I'm in.
I agree that age group is going to be more open to it than our age group.
Well, I have people, first of all, I don't think I'm in your age group, but I have people in your age group and my age group that I work with who also don't want to check out, like the older people don't want to check out with their life being as meh as it is. They also want a great life. So I don't think there's anybody who can't use this to get there. But I do think there's a groundswell among the younger people that they're more inclined to go get it without having to feel really, 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 really horrible first.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, while we're not in exactly the same age group, I'm a Gen Xer, but we were the generation that was basically told to suck it up. But a lot of us even have started realizing, no, it's not about sucking it up. There's other stuff going on here.
Why would you do that?
Yeah. Well, hey, coach. Yeah, take a lap. A book like this could probably set some perspectives free in my age group's case. I do have a lot of friends that do like to do self-development stuff, and I think this book is probably going to be on their reading list. I know 3 that it will absolutely be on their reading list.
Well, when does this air? Is this live? No.
No, it'll probably air sometime in April or May.
Okay, because it's we have a 99-cent Kindle sale right now, but I don't.
How long will it go?
I don't know.
Okay, so I might be able to fast track this then. I'll just have to get this one edited and put it up a little earlier, just to try and take advantage of that. So for those of you that are watching or listening right now, if it's not, next year, she has a special going on. There's a link down below. Try it. If it works, great, 99 cents for a Kindle. If not, get yourself a copy. Grab a hard copy. I mean, I have a bookshelf still full of books, and I'm still bringing more books as we go.
The thing that I want people to know is that my daughter, who's probably more like your age, read it and said to me, "Mom, this is so great for all of us who are so busy." It's supposed to be a really easy, fun read, like short.
Well, you've got stories in there, so that's already telltale that it should be a good read, because stories are definitely teachers. Me being in marketing, that's exactly what we do. It's all we do.
I got lots of stories.
Yeah, well, and that's perfect. I mean,
lots of science and actually it says that down here, based on science and stories.
Perfect. See,
so that's lots of references for further whatever exploration, but also tons of stories.
Cool. Are you doing your own podcasting at all, or are you doing anything?
I'm not doing podcasting. I am working my brains out on developing a book-based online course.
Okay, awesome. Any time frame on when that might be ready to go, like this year?
I don't know. They're moving really fast. I don't think it's going to take too much longer, maybe a month or 2.
Awesome. Good to hear. And again, when it releases, let us know, please. For those of you that are watching, that link, if you're watching long enough, farther enough, you might see that link in the comments below. If you're on Anchor, of course, you'll probably see it there as well. You're on social, I assume, at least on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm also about to, well, it's private and visible. My Facebook group, which is going to be the Getting to Great 4, and I have to fill in that blank. There's going to be that also. It actually exists right now, but it's not operative until the course is.
Sure. That makes absolute sense.
Those are working together.
Where are you most active on those?
Well, I post every week on my blog, which is on my website at madelaneweiss.com. My tribe is biggest on Facebook.
Okay.
But that's on my personal Facebook.
Sure.
And I'm developing the business page and the group. So this is all new and not active yet.
But you're posting, that matters. At least there's some wisdom coming out of there, and then people can come follow. That's good enough.
If people go to my website, there's a pull down that has free mind management exercises.
Oh, perfect.
If you grab one of those, you can actually grab them all, but if you only want one, I recommend the power breathing one. It's a 30-second mindset reset. 30 seconds, I swear, mindset reset. If you grab that, you'll also be on my mailing list, and you will get the blog post every week. And it's on everyday matters that matter to all of us.
Awesome. I'm just taking notes to make sure that I have all
this. Just posted on why can't we talk about money? No one wants to talk about money.
That's really weird that people don't. I mean, it's like the one thing that makes everything move. Hello.
I know. I did a whole thing on why we don't, and also I have a whole chapter devoted to money in here.
Perfect. Even
Yeah.
better. It's a conversation that needs to be had.
More than it is, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned that younger demographic, they've been standing up. They're talking about money. In fact, they're talking about money a lot more than we ever did.
Well, actually, I have been blown away by what you just said. When I wrote this book, I said to myself, okay, Self, you can't be the only one who knows that you wrote a book. So you're going to have to figure out how to market it. So I joined these marketing programs,
Yeah.
and they are filled with this demographic, and they're on fire. These people are, and people, professionals and the gentry, like, don't even know they exist.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful. And one of the things I've noticed about this demographic, again, out there, correct me if I'm wrong, is they really help each other.
It's really their nature. I've watched that with my son. He's of that. He's right in that area. Although he's only
Everybody's
19.
helping everybody else. Yeah.
They will, when he was in school, I used to watch, and apparently this was also observed in a study. This generation will take 4 or 5. They'll sit at a table. You give them an assignment. One will get on a computer, one will get on the phone, and the rest of them will talk. While they're talking, the other 2 are researching, and they find stuff way better than even some of my friends who are really good at search. They find stuff way better and way faster and much more viable sources, if you will. And they'll come back and they're like, this is what we found, this is what we see, and this is what's going on. And you look at it and you're just like, we weren't able to do that. It just wasn't. Half the time we were competing against each other. These kids are like, screw competition.
I know.
They're all about, if we're going to compete, we're competing against ourselves, and we're in. Where do we go next?
It's so inspiring.
It is. It's really, I'm
It
so
sparkles,
happy. I'm so happy because it really re-enlivens my faith and hope for our future. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. Well, guys, we have reached the end of our time. All the links, by the way, guys, to get the book, again, it's going to be down in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. I want to thank Madelaine Weiss. Madelaine, thank you so much for coming in and sharing time. I've had a blast listening and learning from you.
I want to thank you. I had a wonderful time too.
Thanks so much.
Great.
That's
This is really good.
I always like having friends over for coffee.
Yeah.
And I think I've made a new friend. So cheers.
You did make a new friend.
Awesome. And it looks like you have a friend in the background there.
That is Raphael Leonardo.
Raphael.
And my daughter said to me, Mom, you know those are Ninja Turtles, right? And I said, no, I didn't. That's the Cuban national dog. And I looked for Cuban names.
Those are. They work. That's perfect.
That's Raphael. Rafito.
Sure. Well, and then actually it's not TMNT, it's really artists, but we won't go there. Anyway, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, remember that if you haven't yet, subscribe button's over there. There's a bell next to it. Hit that too, because that tells you when we put up the next interview with awesome guests like this. If you're listening on any of the podcasting platforms, make sure you download or subscribe. If you're listening on anchor.fm, that's our home plate. Feel free to give us some support there. We could use a little bit. Every bit helps, every bit counts. My big thing though is, if you know somebody else that could benefit from hearing or watching this, go share this. Send it to them direct in a message if you don't want to put it out to the whole world, but send it to somebody. Somebody out there is going to pick up a huge piece of gold out of one of these podcasts, and they're going to attribute it to you as being compassionate enough and caring enough to have sent them that information. Send it. If you want to post it up on your social. We love seeing that as well. We always end the same. We always tell everybody we love you for making the time and taking the time to come and listen, to come and watch. It means a lot to us. It really does. And we hope that we can constantly bring you good content, things that matter, things that inspire, things that motivate, and get you to take action like the book is going to teach you how to do. Make sure you get yourself a copy. Stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. For Madelaine Weiss and myself, Coffee with Mike. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.